In 1900, one out of every 4 trees in the Appalachian Mountains produced food. Entire towns depended on it. Families filled barns with it. Livestock survived winters because of it. Appalachian children finished their schoolwork, grabbed burlap sacks, and ran into the woods to gather chestnuts they would sell for cash before supper. Then, in less than 50 years, nearly 4 billion of these trees disappeared from America, not because they stopped producing food, not because people stopped using them, because of a biological disaster so large that scientists still consider it one of the greatest ecological collapses in North American history. Today, most Americans have never heard the name of the tree that once fed a nation. This is the story of the American chestnut. Welcome to USA Grows. The archive opens in the forests of eastern North America circa 1600. Before European colonists arrived, the American chestnut, Castanea dentata, dominated the landscape. Its range stretched from southern Maine down through the Appalachian Spine, across the Ohio Valley, and deep into Mississippi. Approximately 200 million acres of eastern forest contained chestnut. That is an area larger than Texas. And these were not small trees. Some exceeded 100 feet tall, towering over oaks and maples. Trunks often exceeded 10 feet in diameter. Mature trees could live for centuries. In some Appalachian communities, locals called chestnut the perfect tree. Because the chestnut did something no other tree did, it produced massive, reliable annual crops of food while also producing some of the most valuable wood on the continent. Now let us talk about that food production, because this is where the scale becomes almost unimaginable. A single mature chestnut tree could produce hundreds of pounds of nuts every autumn. Unlike oaks, which have boom and bust mast years, the chestnut produced a dependable harvest year after year. Imagine planting one tree. That tree feeds your children, then your grandchildren, then your great-grandchildren. The American chestnut could do exactly that. Those nuts were not like walnuts or pecans. Chestnuts are different. They contain less fat, more carbohydrates, significant vitamin C, and fiber. Historically, they were not treated like a snack. They were treated like bread growing on trees. Families roasted them, boiled them, dried them, and ground them into flour that kept through winter. Children earned money gathering chestnuts by the bushel. Whole forests dropped food onto the ground every autumn. Trains loaded with chestnuts rolled into New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. The forest functioned like a giant grocery store. But the chestnut did not just feed humans, it fed ecosystems. Black bears relied heavily on chestnut mast before hibernation. Wild turkeys consumed chestnuts. White-tailed deer foraged under chestnut canopies. Squirrels depended on the annual nut crop. And before they went extinct, passenger pigeons once fed on chestnut forests in flocks that darkened the sky. When the chestnut disappeared, entire food chains changed with it. The wood was equally miraculous. Chestnut wood is naturally rot-resistant, straight-grained, lightweight, and durable. Americans built barns across Appalachia from chestnut. They split it into fence posts that lasted decades. They carved it into furniture, telegraph poles, railroad ties, shingles, and even caskets. America built homes, barns, fences, and entire local economies from a tree that also produced food. Imagine a tree so valuable that entire communities planned their year around its harvest. That was the American chestnut. Then, in 1904, the killer arrived. A forester at the Bronx Zoo in New York noticed cankers spreading on chestnut trees. The culprit was a fungus never before seen in North America, Chryphonyctria parasitica. The pathogen had arrived hidden inside Asian chestnut nursery stock. Asian chestnuts had evolved alongside the fungus and developed resistance. American chestnuts had no defenses at all. The fungus enters through wounds in the bark, grows through the cambium layer, and girdles the tree. Above the canker, everything dies. The roots often survive, sending up hopeful shoots, but the shoots become infected and die before reaching maturity. The disease spread faster than anyone believed possible. Spores traveled by wind, by rain, by birds, by insects. Mountainsides that had glowed green for centuries slowly turned gray. Within decades, the blight killed an estimated 3 to 4 billion trees. Entire mountainsides changed appearance. Scientists attempted quarantines. They failed. Fungicides were tried. They failed. Cutting infected trees only opened wounds for more spores. America threw every tool it had at the disease. Nothing worked. The American chestnut was functionally eliminated as a dominant forest species in less than 50 years. One of the most important food-producing trees on Earth vanished within a human lifetime. The economic damage was catastrophic. Imagine every grocery store, lumberyard, and feed store disappearing at the same time. That's what the chestnut blight did to Appalachia. Rural economies lost major income sources. Sawmills that had specialized in chestnut closed. Nut markets that had shipped trainloads of chestnuts collapsed. Livestock feeding practices had to change. Families who had relied on chestnut harvests to buy shoes and salt suddenly had nothing to sell. Some towns never recovered. The USDA estimated that the loss of chestnut timber alone is worth billions in today's dollars. The loss of the annual nut crop is incalculable. So what replaced the chestnut? Oaks expanded into former chestnut territory. Maples expanded. Poplars expanded. But none of them produce the same reliable annual mast crop. None of them produce rot-resistant lumber. The forest composition of eastern North America was permanently changed. In 1900, the forest fed people. By 1950, the food was gone. Nature filled the gap, but it never truly replaced what was lost. Here's what they didn't tell you. The American chestnut never entirely died. Millions of roots remain alive underground. The roots never surrendered. Today, if you walk through the forests of Appalachia, you'll still find chestnut sprouts. Young trees emerge from ancient root systems. They grow for a few years, sometimes reaching 15 or 20 feet tall. Then the blight finds them. The cankers appear. The tree dies back, but the root sends up another shoot, and another, and another. The tree refuses to accept extinction. Across America, ancient roots are still alive beneath the soil, waiting for a chance to become forests again. For more than 40 years, scientists have been trying to give them that chance. The American Chestnut Foundation was founded in 1983. Researchers at SUNY ESF and other institutions have developed blight-resistant hybrids by crossbreeding American chestnuts with Asian species. Back-cross breeding programs have produced trees that are nearly pure American chestnut with the single trait of resistance. Genetic engineering programs have inserted a gene from wheat that detoxifies oxalic acid, the chemical the fungus uses to kill tree tissue. Restoration projects are now active in multiple states. The comeback effort has become one of the largest tree restoration projects in American history. But here's the bigger question that no one in a modern food system wants to answer. What if one of the greatest food security tools in American history has been sitting forgotten for a century? The chestnut is a perennial food producer. You plant a tree once, and it produces food for decades, even centuries, without replanting, without tilling, without fertilizer. America once had a food tree forest covering millions of acres. Every autumn, that forest dropped millions of pounds of food onto the ground for free. That system didn't fail because it was flawed. It failed because a foreign fungus arrived, and before we could fix it, the industrial food system replaced local perennial agriculture with annual monocultures that require constant inputs, constant replanting, and constant purchase. As food prices rise and interest in food forests grows, the chestnut may be more relevant today than at any time in the last 100 years. Chestnut agroforestry is being explored again. Interest in food forests is growing. Researchers are beginning to ask whether bringing back the chestnut could help diversify American agriculture, reduce erosion, and provide a stable source of nutritious, gluten-free flour. Some farmers are planting hybrid chestnuts on marginal land. They're realizing that a tree that produces hundreds of pounds of nuts per year, with no annual planting, no fertilizer, and no plowing, might just be the future of sustainable agriculture. The past and the future are the same tree. What would America look like today if we still had 4 billion food-producing trees? The American chestnut is not a lost cause. It is a sleeping giant. The roots are still there, the science is advancing, the knowledge is returning, and one day, perhaps in your lifetime, you might walk through an Appalachian forest where 1 out of every 4 trees is again an American chestnut. That forest will feed people again, it will feed wildlife again, it will build homes again, and it will remind us that the best food systems are not the ones we invent in laboratories, but the ones we lost and are brave enough to bring back. If this story opened something for you, subscribe to USA Grows and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next story opens soon.